and Planning Board Member John Davis, and to thank you each for taking the time to come before us today, the day before a most important mayoral primary in the city. A couple of ground rules I'd like to set. The order of speaking was determined earlier by lot. Mr. Davis will go first, followed by Mayor Robbins and Council President Keene. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to make an opening statement and 2 minutes at the end for closing. The order of questioning will rotate among the candidates, and the candidate will have no more than 2 minutes for his or her answer. Mr. Hill at the back of the room is our official timer. All of the questions that the candidates will be asked were generated by students in the social science classes attending today, and most focused upon educational issues. While some issues may not directly be within the purview of the office of mayor, students recognize that whomever is mayor has the ear of the public and the press and may broker change. Therefore, they are interested in your position on each of the questions. Students are asked to be attentive and to refrain from side talk, as the acoustics in this room tend to amplify sound and make it difficult for candidates to hear questions. Students are also reminded that we will all be eating their lunch today, and we'll let you know when that is, okay? So, without further ado, I would like to go to the winner of our drawing. Mr. Davis, you have 3 minutes for an opening. Mr. Hill?
First, I'd like to thank Mr. Amaral and Mr. Hill for having us here this morning. This gives all of you an opportunity to look at the 3 candidates for mayor here in Attleboro. The mayor plays an important role in setting the tone for how the city is going to be managed and run for the next 2 years. 15 years ago, I sat in the audience just like you are today. At that time, I wasn't really too enthusiastic about politics, as most of you probably are not overly thrilled about it today. But someday, you may find yourself in a totally different position. When you get older and you have kids, you're going to be trying to look out for their best interests, just as we are trying to look out for your best interest and the interests of your children. Things have changed a lot since I was sitting in your position 15 years ago. Back then, computers were just coming into being a big thing, and technology has advanced incredible since then. And today, it's so much more important for people to get a good education in order to get the kind of career and job that you want. Remember, when you get through with schooling, you're going to have to work at a career for 40 to 50 years. And believe me, I've worked in a factory for 10 years building up my business. I know what it is to do one particular job for a long period of time. And you want to make sure that you get yourself into a career field that's going to be suited to you. I've been an advocate of education ever since I started campaigning. All along I've said that good education is basically the future of this country. If we're not willing to spend the money to educate our kids, what are we willing to spend our money on? And I think it's important that each and every one of you take advantage of the opportunities that you have here at Attleboro High School. You know, when I was here, I just basically went through the motions. I didn't make the most of the opportunity that I had. But I hope that each and every one of you will take better advantage of the opportunity you have. Because today, you have much greater opportunity than I had and my parents had. Back when my parents went to school, half the kids would drop out halfway through high school to go work in a jewelry factory. Luckily, most of you don't have to do that today. You have the opportunity to go get a good high school education, and most of you are going to go on to college or some further education, because you've got to be out there thinking about how you're going to create a life for yourself so that you can help raise your children for a better standard of living than I had and you're going to have. That's one thing. We always got to be preparing for the future. And hopefully, no matter what, all of you will be thinking about the future, because it's the future. Those are the kids that are going to take care of you when you're old and elderly. And every one of us is going to get older and have to rely on the generations below us to take care of us someday. So always keep that in the back of your mind.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mayor Robbins?
Thank you very much. I want to begin by thanking you for inviting us here today and for your interest in our city elections. Attleboro's been changing for the better these last few years. With professional management from City Hall and real cooperation, we've eliminated the deficit, balanced the budget, improved public facilities, and increased funding for education. The people of Attleboro have been telling me that they like the way the city has been changing. They want us to continue with this steady, well-planned march into the future. They know that the choices we make today will determine how our city does in the financial reality of coming years. Because I agree with and support the people of Attleboro, I think this year's most important issue is balancing our needs and our wants, setting priorities among the many things that still remain to be done. We do not educate our young people in isolation. You live in the community, you require all the services that other citizens require, and it's important for you that we continue with the progress we've made in basic services: water, sewer, roads, police, fire, education. These are all very important. We must take care of what we've built, we must remain financially responsible, and we must work even harder to keep building for the future. Attleboro's economy has to be supported and strengthened, and the city has to be ready to support the young people in every way. And that means not just the best possible education and recreation opportunities, but the best possible city. Since my earliest days of participating in Attleboro's government, as a member and then chairman of the planning board and elected charter commissioner, I've been learning about our city. When my kids were in high school, I went back to college and earned a master's degree in public administration to go with my Stanford University diploma. And yeah, I'm real proud of my university these days. They did great against Notre Dame on Saturday. 16 years of service as an at-large counselor, including 6 consecutive years as council president, taught me how to work with and lead groups of diverse individuals. So again, this year I offer my combination of professional knowledge and hands-on experience to the voters of Attleboro. And again, I'm asking them to have confidence in my ability to keep our city changing for the better.
Thank you, Mayor Robbins. Council President Keene.
Thank you. To give you a little background on myself, I've served 14 years on the City Council and served on several key positions throughout the 14 years. I've served as Finance Chairman under 2 different administrations. I've been Vice President for 2 years, and I've been City Council for 4 years, which I am presently City Council President. I've also been acting mayor for 6 months. With the experience, I firmly believe that I have the temperament, knowledge, and leadership ability to address the growing concerns of the city, such as fire, police, recreation, and educational needs. My administration will work to solve the growing needs of recreational facilities and programs. We will work to meet on a regular basis with the Central Parents Organization, the School Council, and also the Student Council to ensure educational needs are met. We must, and I will work together so that the students of Attleboro High School have a safe environment for learning, along with the program's needs to fulfill the missions of our schools, of developing citizens to participate successfully in a democratic and just society. Thank you.
Thank you to all the candidates. First question, and as I said, the order was determined earlier by a lot. We'll start with candidate Davis, go to candidate Robbins, and then to candidate Keene. The first question is, what do you believe is the biggest problem at Attleboro High School, and how do you plan to help fix it?
Well, I think the biggest problem that we presently have, and it's one that's becoming greater and greater every year, is the increasing enrollment. The more number of students you have confined into one building, you run into a significant amount of space problems. One of the things I've talked about for the last year is that eventually, if we plan for the future, you're going to need to build another high school in about a decade. And long-term planning is a very key thing in this. You can't build a school in 3 or 4 years. If you know anything about planning for a school, it can take 5, 6 years to get state approval, be in line for the reimbursement. First, you have to find a place to build a school. So I think the key thing that's going to affect Attleboro High School is actually finding an additional high school building that's going to be necessary in 8 to 10 years. Other than for that, I can't think of any major individual problems that I know of.
Thank you. Mayor Robbins?
Same question?
Same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, it's fine. I think probably the biggest problem that we have here at Attleboro High, and it's really true of just about any high school, is to keep the enthusiasm that kids have when they first come to school with them all the way through the 12 years so that you really get the most out of your education. There's so much going on in this world, so many other things that call on your time and your interest, that some kids just don't particularly seem to stay interested in school. And it's real hard because everybody's not interested in the same things. And I think that's one of the advantages we have in a big comprehensive high school like this, is that we can have different kinds of programs and different kinds of courses and different kinds of majors that interest all of the different young people, and that we can really make this effort to keep people from dropping out of school. Probably the most important thing in terms of your future is whether or not you complete high school. Look at the number of people that go back and get GED later because they finally realize that they need to have this education. It's a heck of a lot easier to do it when you're young. It's a heck of a lot easier to do it when the school is all set up for you to do it, and when there are people around to help you, and when your friends are doing the same thing. It's real hard to be the only one going to school when your friends are all out working. It's much better to do things as you move along through life at the sort of appropriate time. And so I think that we have to do everything we can here at the high school to keep everybody interested in their education and interested in their school years. And I would also like to add that I don't believe that we should have 2 high schools in Attleboro. I don't think that we're ever going to get big enough so that we need to have that sort of inner city rivalry. Let's stick together and be one city.
Okay, thank you. Betty Keene?
Money is always an issue for the budget time, not only for the high school, but for all the schools. I want to make sure there's enough money in the budget for programs and that all your needs are met. I think we could also expand the vocational programs. I know that's been a sore subject amongst the administration. I think we need to work better to make sure that our kids can go to the vocational programs. One of the things that's happened throughout society is that a lot of the contracting that goes on out in today's society, the special entities of the workings of building a building, the specialty people aren't there. We need to address that problem. We can address it through our vocational needs. We need to make sure that we don't start charging user fees for children to play sports. All children should be able to play sports free of charge. We need to also make sure that children do not fall through the cracks. The kids, if they're having problems with learning, they have a place to go. That we just don't boot them out of school. We want to take care of them. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be addressed first to Mayor Robbins, then to candidate Keene and candidate Davis. Do you feel it is appropriate to spend approximately $65,000 to replace the lights on the football field?
Obviously I do, because I proposed it. But I think what's important is to remember where this money came from and why it is that we think that this is a time when we can do an extra project like lights on a football field. This was extra money. This wasn't part of the regular state aid that comes from the state to the cities and towns. This was because this year's lottery earned more money than anybody expected. And so they were distributing additional money to the cities and towns. And this is a time when you look for a project to do that's special and extra. And you don't use that money just to put in the budget because you won't have it next year. And if you don't have it next year, then how are you going to pay for whatever it is that you've added to your annual expenditures? This is the kind of money that you use for a special project. And I think the people who care about the football field and the sports have been asking for years and years. We have done a number of other things. We have come up with buildings and fields and that sort of thing. And it just seems as though this was the time and this was the opportunity that we had to do this special project.
Thank you. Council President Keene?
The mayor's right. They've been asking for years and years. They've been asking her administration for years and years. It wasn't until about 2 years ago that Mr. Monash, who was a former school committee member from the American Legion, came before the City Council. City Council took the ball and ran with it. The mayor said there was no money at that time. City Council put pressure on her. Bob Duffin, who was a Ward 5 City Councilor, advocated it. It's Bob Duffin that brought that forward. It's not the mayor. Matter of fact, Mayor, the money is not even appropriated yet. And it looks like there won't be any lights for football until maybe next year.
Thank you. Candidate Davis?
That's right. I mean, you kids out there know what's going on. You know, it wasn't until they had extra money that they even considered this. This wasn't a priority of the administration. They felt they would take advantage of this opportunity because they had extra money, and I think that's great. But why weren't they willing to put this as a priority before and work it into our budget? You know, $65,000 is not a very large amount relative to our budget. They spend more money than that on a lot of things that you kids wouldn't believe. You know, I think this shows how they prioritize things like this, is that they wait until they have a windfall before they're willing to make the effort to give you what we've needed for years. I mean, all of you have been out there on that field. I was out there at a football game a couple nights ago, and you can hardly see what's going on. Not to mention that the bleachers are falling apart. You know, ask them when they're going to do something about those bleachers out there before someone breaks their neck.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Excuse me. In the interest of time, so that we can hear the candidates' view on the largest number of questions, I would ask you to hold your applause to the end. Thank you. Third question will go first to Council President Keene, then to Planning Board Member Davis, and then to Mayor Robbins. Ms. Keene, would you support the idea of an open campus at Attleboro High School, and that would be one wherein students could come and go depending on when they had classes or didn't have classes?
Actually, I wouldn't support an open campus. I think that students need to be on the school grounds and within the facility. I don't think it's in the best interest. We're here for educational purposes and not to have fun.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
Well, as in any other project, you'd want to see what specifically was being proposed, but I think that's a relatively good idea. You're preparing these kids to go out into the real world and function like adults. And I think you've got to give them a responsibility and allow them to schedule their day the way you and I do. We learn to prioritize things. We learn to be in the right place at the right time. And I think giving people freedom and opportunities teaches them how to act as an adult. I think that would be something to consider. I mean, certainly there would be a lot of ground rules and a lot of detail involved. But yeah, I think generally that's a relatively good idea.
Thank you. Mayor Robbins?
I think this is an idea that could be talked about, but I'm not sure that I think all the young people at Attleboro High ought to have this privilege. Maybe this is something that you ought to work up to so that when you're a senior, it's a privilege available to you. And one of the things I think we have to remember is that under ed reform and with the increasing number of classes that they want kids to take and time in class they want you to spend, there's going to be less and less time during the day for people to leave. There's not time at this point really even for study halls that some folks want. And I think that maybe this is one of these ideas that can be talked about, but that probably is not possible to implement right now and might be a sort of a wonderful incentive for seniors.
Thank you very much. Next question will go first to Mr. Davis, then to Mayor Robbins, then to Mr. Keene. Mr. Davis, what do you plan to do to rejuvenate the downtown area?
Well, this seems to be the big concern of almost everyone I talk to in the city. What we need to do is, again, this comes back to long-term planning. You've got the plan for what is going to draw people to the downtown that they can't get anywhere else. The reason people go to the mall is because there's so many opportunities there. They can get a lot of things under one roof, so they find it convenient to be there. We've got to supply something in that downtown to draw people in, something they want that they can't easily get somewhere else. And I think it's not a matter of planning, oh gee, what's real popular today to draw people in. Again, remember, these kind of things take several years to implement. You've got to figure out what's going to attract people 3 years, 4 years, 5 years from now. And you've got to find things that are going to draw whole families. You can't just develop something that only appeals to the elderly or only appeals to little kids. You've got to find something that's going to draw a cross-section of the population. Off the top of my head, I'm not really sure what that is. At this point, we have so many problems up there with traffic and parking that there's a lot of obstacles to be overcome to really rejuvenate the downtown the way everyone wants to.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mayor Robbins?
Well, I think it's important to remember that it's very easy to say we need a plan, and that it takes a very long time to make a plan and then carry one out. When I first became mayor, we did some very major planning for the downtown, and some of that stuff is only starting to happen now. When the traffic signal project is completed, we hope that the traffic patterns will be better in the downtown. We spent over a year arguing with the state so that we would not lose parking as we did that project. And eventually, the superintendent of public works and I figured out a way that was acceptable to the state to be able to keep parking on both sides of the street. I think that some of the things that we have done at this point have been very good for the downtown. You'll notice there's not nearly as much empty space as there was, that a couple of the old mills have gone down, and that was a project that took years. to plan and to fund and to finally bring to fruition. And I think that the downtown market in the summertime the Wednesday night market is a wonderful activity. People enjoy that. But probably the most important thing to remember is that the city doesn't own the downtown and the city doesn't run the downtown. And so we're ready to help any private enterprise that comes down and wants to give it a try. We have some tax incentives that are available to people who want to fix up their buildings. There's a facade program going forward with some of our community development money to pay 50% of the cost of fixing up the front of your building. And I'm sure you guys saw what the Bank Street Hardware did just in this last year. And we've been working real hard to try to keep up our end so that our buildings look as good as they can, so that our sidewalks are repaired as often as we can possibly afford, so that things stay in good condition. And I think that working together, the people who own the businesses and the city, is probably the only way to gradually work ourselves out of the kind of problem that occurs when you have them all.
Thank you, Mayor Robbins. Council President Keene.
One of the things, Wednesday night spends a success. I think we ought to carry that over into November to sponsor the Christmas season for the retail shops. We need to work with the downtown. We need to have a teamwork approach with the downtown associates. One of the other things at downtown, people come into the city and see that it's dirty. It's not clean enough for my liking. It needs to be cleaned better. I also would advocate that we cut the 2-hour parking down to 1-hour parking, so that people aren't just parking their cars and spending time not shopping, but just going other places. You'd be amazed how many cars you see in there that people aren't really shopping. They've parked their cars and they've taken off. Speaking of the area where the old mill buildings were, I would advocate having retail shops, something where people are in and out. That brings people into the downtown. Campaigning downtown, there's a lot of traffic that goes through the center. Problem is we need to stop it. I think if we bring in the right retail shops and some businesses into that new location where the old mills were, that we can bring the people down to downtown. And we need to keep on promoting the downtown, promoting the city, not to be negative. There is a lot of negative about our downtown, but times have changed. We're not going to have the old downtown like we used to. But the future is bright. The stores are being filled, and I believe by keeping the city clean, by changing the 1-hour parking, and working with the downtown associates, we can work together and make it better.
Thank you. Mayor Robbins, do you think the school should offer free driver education classes?
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. I don't see why we don't have that. Where I grew up, we did have driver ed in high school, and it's very important, I think, for all the young people to get not just learn how to drive. Very often you know before you're old enough you know how to drive. My kids learned up in the country, but I think that the things that come in a driver's ed course are probably very important for young people to learn about. Increasingly, all of us know someone who was hurt in an accident, someone who may have lost their lives in an accident. I think we're beginning to understand that cars are a very large and complicated piece of equipment. And I think that the things that come in a class like that would be very beneficial for everybody in high school.
Thank you. Councilman Keene?
Yes, I think that's a good idea. I think we can incorporate it into an elective class for the students that want to take it. Just a couple weeks ago, my brother's sister-in-law was killed. She's 19 years old. I think kids really don't understand how powerful a vehicle is. I work in the fire department. It's amazing what happens, some of these accidents we arrive to. I think what also needs to be emphasized is that people use seatbelts and respect other people on the road. It's a lot of what we call road rage. People take it out on each other. You need to be conscious what goes on behind the wheel. And I think by teaching in the school that we'll save lives. I think that's what we want. We just don't want kids going up and getting their license and just getting behind the wheel, because that is a powerful machine, and it can really hurt you or others.
Mr. Davis?
Well, the answer is obviously yes. The purpose of school is to educate and prepare you for real life, to teach you the things that you need to do to function in everyday life. And everyone out here is going to end up owning a car. It's your means of transportation. It's how you're going to get to your job. It's how you're going to get to college. It's how you're going to do everything. It becomes a real integral part of your life. And of course, we should prepare you for that, just as we should anything else that's going to be that important to your life.
Thank you very much. Let's see, next question goes first to Council President Keene. Considering that the middle and elementary schools are moving towards having computers in every classroom, would you support bringing this technology into every classroom at the high school?
Certainly. I mean, obviously the question is yes. The problem is what we need to do is figure out how we're going to pay for it. And that's where we need to work with the school councils, central parents organizations, school administrations, and the students, and the citizens. There's several grants out there that we can apply for, and I know there's been several donations by major companies. We need to work with companies of Attleboro of supplying us with computers. Today's technology is unbelievable. It's changing every day. And for you to have the right tools to go in the workplace, you certainly need to know how to operate a computer.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
Absolutely. I mean, technology is the future. Like I said, when I went to school here just 15 years ago, computers were a very small thing. Only the very top kids in the class actually even took any computer classes. Now, even the average person has to be proficient in a computer to be able to function in society. To do even most basic jobs now, you have to be computer literate. And I think, you know, when you hear people talking about where we're going to get the funding, they're hedging. The bottom line is we've got to provide these services. We're going to get the money from somewhere. You know, it's great to say we're going to get it from grants or we're going to get it from that. But first, you've got to make up your mind that you're going to supply the service one way or another. Somewhere you're going to get the money. And I think it's important that we realize that this isn't something that we can consider not doing. This is something that has to be done, and we have to get off our butt and start doing it.
Thank you, Mayor Robbins.
Well, I think we certainly should incorporate computers everywhere that they are appropriate in the high school, just like we do in the elementary schools and the middle schools. There are applications for vocational uses. There's computers that show up in automobile shops, computers that show up in art classes. All those computers need to be learned, and all those processes need to be learned by the young people so that they can carry out whatever profession it is they're interested in. But there are still some classes where it seems to me it's important for people to interact with each other and not with machines. There are times when possibly the computer should be used for your studying or in the study hall, in the library, in the resource center. And when you come to class, you should be having that opportunity to talk with one another, to talk with the teacher, and to actually explore your own ideas in the context of other living human beings instead of just computers.
Thank you very much. Next question is directed first to Mr. Davis. Would you support seniors by asking the school committee to give senior students studies, or at least one in a cycle, so that they can go to the Office of Graduate Opportunity?
Yeah, I think this is just good common sense. And I think the big thing you hit on here is that the mayor has to interact with the school committee. Years ago, the mayor used to attend all the school committee meetings. Now you have the mayor who sends a representative to take notes about what goes on at the school committee meetings. I think it's important that you're there and to interact with them and tell them what the public is saying. Because as mayor, you're out there talking to all the people in the community. You know what the parents and what the students and what everyone really wants. And you've got to be willing to give that input to the school committee. You know, a lot of you may have great ideas, but you wouldn't have the guts to go to a school committee meeting and stand up there and tell them, hey, this is what we need to do. But in the mayor's position, you can do that. You don't have to be afraid to tell them, hey, this is what I think we need to do because this is what the students and the parents want. And yeah, I think that's one thing that I would take a really good look at. And if I felt there was something that needed to be done and the school committee wasn't doing it, I wouldn't be afraid to push it forward and make sure that it happens.
Thank you. Mayor Robbins?
Well, there's a difference between attending every school committee meeting and going to meetings where you think you have something to offer, an idea, something that you want to support, some point that you want to make. The mayor used to be a member of the school committee. That's the reason the mayor went. And when Mr. Shang was mayor, he felt that this was a tremendous time drain and asked the people of Attleboro, the voters, to change the charter so that the mayor would not be a member. And the people voted to change the charter. They decided that what they wanted was their elected school committee to run the schools. Now, as I keep saying all the time, this is everybody's government. I support the people of Attleboro. If the people of Attleboro wanted the mayor to be a member of the school committee, the mayor still would be attending every school committee meeting. Now I think the 9 people that we elect to run the schools do a very fine job. And the mayor interacts with them whenever it's appropriate, comes to meetings, as indeed I have, whenever there's something important to be said, but doesn't try to run everything. You can't be the person who runs everything. Nobody can. You have to have faith in other people's ability and other people's caring and other people's ideas.
Thank you. Council President Keene?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes.
I don't
Would
think that was answered.
Would you support seniors by asking the school committee to give seniors studies at least one a cycle so that they can go to the Office of Graduate Opportunity?
Yes, that's an excellent idea. And if that's what the kids of the school want, then I think it needs to be brought forward. And as mayor, I would work with the school council, the student council, and the school administrations to see that's implemented. I think it's an excellent opportunity because that's your future. You need to have time to work out what your future needs going to be. And I think I guess I have to beg the question, why isn't it being done now?
Thank you. Next question goes first to Mayor Robbins. Do you think drug use at the high school is up? And if so, how could you help to reduce drug use at the high school? Quietly.
To be quite honest, I'm not sure whether drug use at the high school is up. I know there are some people would say it is and some people say it isn't. I think it's a serious problem for young people growing up today. And I think it's something that our police department and all of our teachers and all of the adults that work with young people are very aware of and are doing as much as they can to attempt to deal with. I think that our DARE programs with the younger kids are having some success. I certainly hope so. I think that the drug concentration of our police department has been helpful. I think some of you may have read about one more drug bust over the weekend. We have been working very hard in all the ways that we can to try to assist the young people to deal with this problem. But unfortunately, this is a problem that each of you are going to have to deal with by yourself, in the strength of your own character, with the help of your own friends. We will give you all the assistance we can, but I'm not sure that this is something anybody can do for anybody else. You have to guide your own life, and one of the things you're learning in high school is how to do that. And I think most of you are succeeding beautifully.
Council President Keene?
I really don't know if it's up or not in the school or down. One thing I do know that it's in the community, and that's why I've been advocating a drug task force. And as recently you saw that we just had a drug bust. So a large drug bust, one of the largest in the city's history. So the drugs are out there. I would work with the school council and student council to ensure that there's safety in the school and that there's no drugs. One thing I thought about, in Bristol County Sheriff's Department has offered their services to bring a drug sniffing dog into the school to sniff the lockers. Now, I would work with the students first to make sure that they want to see that happen, because I think we need to make sure that the school is safe for you. But again, I don't know if it's a reality that drugs are up, but I do know it's in the community. And I think it's a constitutional right that every student in this system is free of drugs, and that we should not be intimidated by people that bring drugs into school.
Mr. Davis?
Everybody who wants drug sniffing dogs, raise your hand. That's what I thought. Anyone who thinks that drugs are a bigger problem today wasn't here when I went to school in the early 80s. In the early 1980s, if you sat here right now, you could smell pot. There were crowds of kids hanging out in what used to be the pit, which now is filled in. The difference today is that people are more aware of the problem. There's no greater usage, it's just that people are aware of the detrimental effects that this can have on you. And I think it's important that each and every one of you realize how it's going to affect your lives individually. You know, you don't think about it when you're hanging out with all your buddies and you're all doing the same thing. But you've got to take concern about your own life. Because I know a lot of people, as I've been campaigning around town, I've met a lot of people who have alcohol problems. You wouldn't believe how many people there are with serious drinking problems in this city. People who can't even work because they're addicted to alcohol or drugs. It's unbelievable. And no, I don't think the problem's any worse today. I just think that people realize that it is a problem. And now I think what we need to do is to educate people better as to the serious consequences drugs can have. But this isn't something we're going to eliminate. There's always been drugs to some degree. There's always going to be drugs to some degree. And God forbid we ever have to bring in drugs, yeah, drug sniffing dogs, the search, this isn't the Soviet Union.
Thank you very much. Could I ask you to quiet down, please? Thank you. Quiet, please. Thank you. The next question, interestingly enough, takes a look at another side of the use of a product that many consider harmful. And we'll start first with Council President Keene. Would you support a designated smoking area for teachers and students?
No, I wouldn't. I don't believe that we need to tolerate smoking in the school system. We don't tolerate it in our most of our other places within the city hall, library. I believe that is also a drug. It's addictive, and I don't believe that we should advocate it. Getting back to the drug sniffing dog, Mr. Davis is telling what you want to hear. I'm telling you the fact. If you want a safe environment, I'm not accusing anybody in here of having drugs, but if you want a safe environment, remember, your children will be going through school. If you want a safe environment for your children, you want to make sure it's safe all the time. And the only way to make sure that it's safe is that you investigate the problem. If Mr. Davis doesn't believe there's a problem, then obviously he's not concerned.
Thank you, Mr. Keene. Mr. Davis, the question was, would you support a designated smoking area for teachers and students?
No, actually, I think, unfortunately, smoking is something that's very detrimental to people's health. And, this was something that years ago, almost everyone smoked back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And my father was one of those people who got hooked on smoking. And, when I was your age, I used to try to make him quit every day. And he'd say, oh, just leave me alone, leave me alone. I do what I want to do. And he said that right up to the day that he dropped dead. I don't think it's a good thing. First of all, we can't allow children under the age of 18 to smoke anyway. I mean, that's a violation of state law. I'm not sure it's a good idea to have a facility for teachers to smoke either, because I don't think in a public building that we should in any way encourage or allow that kind of behavior. I know that may seem as though we're restricting people's personal freedoms, but sometimes you have to consider the overall good of the community and the detrimental effects secondhand smoke has. I mean, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but years and years and years of inhaling secondhand smoke, we know is certainly harmful to people.
Mayor Robbins?
I think the phrase is that my freedoms end where your nose begins. And I think that's very appropriate here, because we should not have, I don't believe, smoking areas inside of public buildings because of the number of people inside of public buildings who choose not to smoke. Now, I would hope that young people don't start to smoke. I know how hard it is for people to stop. My in-laws were smokers, and it was a real problem to them all their lives. Fortunately, my parents did not smoke, and I was one of those kind of kids who smoked when I was off with my buddies and didn't smoke when I was at home, and eventually married a guy who didn't smoke, and so we don't smoke in our home. But that was before all of us knew what smoking does and how bad it is for you and how addictive it is. And I think that not starting is probably the very best thing that you can do. And therefore, certainly in our schools, where we're trying to teach people and help people learn how to live their lives to their fullest extent, to the best benefit that they can, it's not a place where we ought to be encouraging either the kids or, quite frankly, the teachers to smoke.
Thank you. Council President, Mr. Davis, teenage pregnancy is a concern in our society. What can you propose to help prevent this problem?
Yeah. Personally, I don't think there's a simple answer to this. I think people have got to realize the responsibilities they take. I'm sure all of you know several students here in the school who have small children, and you've seen how hard it is for them to try to get an education and take care of a small child. I think what we need to do is we need to educate people and show them the consequences that come, from these actions. Again, this comes down to what I said before. Just like drugs have always been here and always will be here, sex has always been here and always will be here. There's no getting around it. But this is a problem that hit a peak about 5 or 6 years ago, and I think we're actually starting to turn down in the number of teenage pregnancies we have in Massachusetts now. I wish I could give you a simple answer as to what we could do. But other than for education, I'm not really sure there is much we can do.
Thank you. Mayor Robbins?
Well, I'm going to start sounding like a broken record, I'm afraid. Once again, this is a case of individual responsibility and individual caring about yourself. And I think what we have to do is start when young children are very young and help them to understand how important it is and what responsibilities go along with being a grown-up. And as you get older and begin doing more and more of the things that adults do, you have to be willing to accept the responsibility. And I think most young people are. I think those young people who have had teenage pregnancies, many of them are doing very well parenting their children. But they would be the first ones to tell you that that's not the way they expected their lives to turn out, that that's not what they planned to do. And I think it's really important for all of you to understand what it is that you can do to avoid this problem, just like what it is you can do to avoid automobile accidents, to not start smoking, and many other of the things that we keep encouraging you from our vast vantage point of tremendous knowledge of a few more years is all. Try to help you not to make the mistakes that maybe some of us make.
Thank you. Council President Keene?
Yeah, I believe this needs to start at home and not the school system. I think that's, the parents need to take the ball and run with it and educate their children in early years about sex. But one of the things I think what we need to do as a school system, if they are pregnant, we should encourage them to make sure that they attend school and help them every which way we can to make sure they graduate and not give up on their education.
Thank you very much. Next question will go to Mayor Robbins first. What kind of an education do I need to become a mayoral candidate like you?
That's a really hard question because I don't think anybody plans when they're 16 or 17 or 18 to become mayor. Most of us don't even plan it when we're 25 or 35 or 45. It's one of these things that kind of happens. I do think that my own education, which is a sort of a strange combination of liberal arts and sciences, was a very good background. I was an English major and a mathematics minor. And I think one of the things that you need to have is the ability to be very comfortable in both the written word and with numbers. You have to be able to deal with the budget, and you have to be able to explain to people what it is that you're doing. So that kind of general education is most helpful. And I think probably just caring about your community and keeping your eyes and ears open so that you learn as much as you can, and participating from a very early point is very important.
Council President Keene?
Well, I think, first of all, what you need to do is you want to serve. You want to serve your community, you're caring, you want to work with people and understand people, how to solve problems, work as a team. This is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and nobody should be excluded.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
I think basically Benny hit on the key point, is people. You've got to have the education of how to deal with the average person. You've got to have the interpersonal skills. A lot of people come to the mayor's position with a lot of different backgrounds, and the more education you have, the better. But the key thing is what you're learning here in school. You're learning not just specific subjects, but you're learning how to learn. Because being mayor or being any other role in government is a learning process. It's a matter of getting out there and talking to the people and being able to get input from the community and then being able to use that input you get to make your decisions. So I think the key thing you've got to get in education if you want to be involved in government anyway is how to listen to people. Those interpersonal skills, that's what's really important. A lot of people that go to college, they don't go just to study a subject. They go to interact, to network, to develop a group of friends, to learn from other people. You don't just learn in your classroom, you learn from the interactions you have with all the people around you. You probably learn as much in study hall or in gym class or in lunch as you do in a lot of your classrooms. Because most of what you learn from the people around you. And I think that the best thing you need is you need an education in real life. You've got to get out there and understand the people that are out there that you're going to represent.
Thank you. Council President Keene, should beepers be banned in the high school, even for those people that might need them because at home there may be a parent or grandparent who's ill?
I don't know of any problems with beepers in the system. I think that people are going to carry the beepers, that's fine, but not to have them on the tone, to have them on vibration. I haven't heard of any problems, and I don't see a problem. Again, I think most of the students in the system are mature adults and can handle the situation correctly.
Mr. Davis?
I think this goes back to my point about your people. You're just like anyone else. You know, in my daily job, or Benny's job, or Judy's job, we all carry beepers, but we use them responsibly. Like I said, you don't set it so it's going to make a loud noise in the middle of a classroom. We're teaching you people how to be responsible adults. And I think this is just one more thing that can help teach you responsibility. You know, I mean, we shouldn't deprive you of the kind of things that we have every day in our daily lives. Because what you're doing right now is you're training for a career and a job in the future. And I think, you know, we should provide you the same opportunities and the same tools that we have in our daily careers.
Mayor Robbins?
Well, I think it tremendously depends on what you need the beeper for. If you have a real need, certainly you should be able to wear one. And if you have a problem at home that you have to hear about, that's really important. On the other hand, you're here to learn, and being interrupted by beeping is sometimes not the best thing that can happen to you. So that I wouldn't say that they should be banned or anything like that. I'm not really in favor of putting any more regulations on young people than we need to. But I think that maybe we need to understand that when we're here for some other purposes. I'm not sure, for example, that a doctor has his beeper in the operating room, or that necessarily the mayor has the beeper when she's standing in front of the city council. There are appropriate times, and there are other times when what you're doing is the most important thing for you and should not be interrupted.
Thank you. Presently, some areas of the school are overheated and others are freezing. Temperature controls need to be fixed. What could you do to help solve this problem? And we're going to start with Mr. Davis.
That's funny, because when I first came in this room this morning, I was joking that it's colder in here than it was outside. This is a problem in most of our school buildings and in most of the city buildings, especially the older ones. This is a matter of maintenance. One of the problems that I've seen become aware of in running public office is that the maintenance of city buildings is not really up to snuff. I mean, we make an effort, but we don't make the maximum effort. I feel that that's one of the reasons why, in my opinion, we've had to build schools rather than maintain some of the older schools that we have. I think maintenance is a very important issue, and I think the heating all comes back to maintenance. I mean, that's stuff that can simply be adjusted. With a little bit of work, that can all be regulated. It's just, I don't think that again, we're not treating you like real people. This wouldn't happen at City Hall, well, even though it does, because City Hall doesn't work either. But they keep making the effort there to try to fix it. I think you have to make sure that you have a comfortable environment. Is she making faces at me again? You have to make sure you have a comfortable environment to work in. You're not going to learn if you're freezing your butt off. You're not going to learn if you're sweating to death. I think we've got to treat you like you're real people.
Thank you.
Well, one of the advantages of our new school buildings is that they do have better climate control. We do have more opportunities to keep it cool in the summer and warm in the winter. If any of you went to Brennan when it was at the old high school, you remember that the windows had to be open on the top floor in order to keep those rooms cool enough, because the heat had to be on in order to keep the rooms down in the lower floors warm enough. And that is a problem with old buildings. And we have a number of old buildings in the city. Our newer buildings should be working right. Sometimes they don't. The new library is a real good example of a building that we haven't been able to successfully get heated or cooled appropriately yet, although having spent a bunch more money on it, we think maybe we're coming in on the home stretch this time. And the reason I was making faces is because the mayor's office is the coldest office in City Hall. City Hall is a system that is meant to have there be numbers of people and office machinery inside the buildings and so inside the rooms. So in the mayor's office, where there's only one person, very often it gets very, very chilly. But I truly believe that we're doing what we can, and we continue to do what we can, and we're probably have better heating and cooling in some of our schools than in any other of our municipal buildings.
Councilman Keene.
Well, there's problems that now exist and we need to know about it. And it needs to be brought through the proper channels. Again, as mayor, I will work with the student council, central parents organization, the school council and administrators to make sure that everything is needed to provide you safe and clean environment for learning. And if you don't feel those needs are met, you can always pick up the phone, and while I'm there, you can call me in my office. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We've now come to the time for our closings, and the order for closings will be the same as the opening. Mr. Davis?
Well, again, I'd like to thank you all for coming out here today. And I know a lot of you, like I said, are only probably half interested. But someday, trust me, you guys will be a lot more interested in city government when you get a little older and you start worrying about your children and your future. As you've seen today, the three of us have a lot of issues that we agree on more or less, and several issues where we differ quite a bit. I think I may relate a little bit more to you because I'm a little bit younger. Judy may relate to the elderly a little bit better because she's a little bit older. I just want to close by just thanking you all for coming out today. I'm sure you've heard enough. I'll leave it at that.
Well, could I ask you to quiet down, please? Please, in the interest of time, so that we can get you out in time. Thank you very much. Mayor Robbins?
Thank you very much. John, I was not going to mention that you're the same age as my youngest child, but you are.
I went to school with her.
Yes, that's right. My goals for the next 2 years are simple and basic. We have to maintain the progress we've made, the full range of services. We have to take care of what we have, both the buildings and green spaces, from schools to roads to playing fields to equipment. We have to continue to concentrate on economic development, support the businesses that are already here, and provide space to attract new companies. And we have to remain financially responsible while building for the future. We need to continue planning and to implement those plans. Many studies have already been done and do not need to be done again. A sewer needs study, a recreation and open space plan, fire station feasibility study. We need to keep moving forward in some of these areas. We need to continue programs that are already underway to upgrade and rebuild our schools, to build sidewalks, to upgrade and build playing fields. We must be prudent, but because tomorrow is built on today, we cannot afford to stand still. As mayor, concern for the city and the people of Attleboro has always guided my decisions. Working with people both in and out of official positions is the basis of my leadership approach. With real cooperation and shared effort, much has been accomplished, but more remains to be done. So I'm running for re-election with the promise to work with all of you to solve the problems of today, to plan for the future, and to keep Attleboro changing for the better.
Thank you very much. Council President Keene?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I'd like to thank Mr. Hill and Mr. Amaral. Going back to the question on open campus, one of the things I said that education, you should have for education, not fun. Well, you should have fun within the system and not on the open campus. I firmly believe my children go to school, and they enjoy going to school. They have a lot of fun, and I think if you have fun in school, it makes the educational process easier. I have a personal concern what happens at Attleboro High School over the several years to come. My twin daughters will be entering their freshman year next year, and the year after that, their younger sister. Remember, we will work as a team. We'll work with the administration, with the Central Parents Organization, the school council, and the student council to ensure that your needs are met, because your needs are the most important. You're the future of our generation and the generations to come. It's time for a change, and it's time for a new beginning. Please select me October 7th. Thank you.
Before you leave, I've just got a couple of